So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Namibia. I am really happy to be here. I'm in the sleepy capital of Windhoek, but it's a Sunday morning, which is probably the sleepiest part of the sleepiest day, which probably makes the place feel all the more sleepy, but I am still really happy to be here. And that is because Namibia is my 100th country, where country is defined as being a member of the United Nations in its own right. So I am working hard not to allow the growing sense of anticlimax to outweigh the delight I feel from having reached that landmark. Did I mention it's a bit sleepy, but I do have something that promises to be a little less sleepy planned for later this afternoon. So in this video I'll show you what I found in Namibia, both sleepy and otherwise, and I'll explain why I engineered it such that Namibia would be my 100th country. I may have undersold things a little in this intro, but I will do my very best to make the rest of the video very exciting. So if that sounds good, stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me.
Oh, me again. So my 100th country. I wanted it to be somewhere a little bit different, a little bit less visited, somewhere a bit interesting to talk about. And for years, in fact probably decades, when I've been somewhere that's been a bit hassly and people come up to you and say, oh, where are you from, in order to start a conversation, I have replied, Namibia. And 99% of the time, it shuts people up. You really should try it. If you say you're from England, they say, oh, David Beckham, and they're engaged and they're hard to shake. If you say Australia, they'll say, oh, Waltzing Matilda, and they're engaged and they're hard to shake. But if you say Namibia, they've got no response planned, and they generally just leave you alone. They should probably respond with Frankie Fredericks, who is probably Namibia's most famous export, who was a sprinter back in the 90s, I think. He was absolutely exceptional, but never actually won any major tournaments. He ended up coming second quite a number of times. But no, they don't come back with that. They tend to leave you alone. Although I will say that being here is the one place where saying you're from Namibia is really not going to work. So the other side of the equation is been to, and I have actually been inside the borders of two other countries, and I've decided not to count them. The first is Pakistan, which I connected through on an aircraft, and I didn't even get off the airplane, so I really can't count that. And the second is Ethiopia, which I have counted in the past, because I did get off the plane there twice, spent a good few hours there, and because we had bus gates, I actually walked on Ethiopian soil. But I didn't legally immigrate into Ethiopia, so I've decided to discount it. And that means Saudi Arabia was country 98, South Africa was country number 99, and Namibia is country number 100. And you know what? I'm pretty happy with that. I only had 41 hours in the country, which is nowhere near enough time to see any more than a small corner of the 35th largest country in the world. And I spent all of that time in and around Windhoek, although as you'll see later I did manage to get an idea of what the rural areas of the country might be like. As I stroll around Windhoek, some backgrounds to the place. Indigenous people populated the land for millennia before the Germans colonised the country in 1884. Following that empire's defeat in the First World War, the administration of the country was mandated to South Africa, which controlled the country until it gained its independence in 1990. It's the driest country south of the Sahara, with a population of 3.1 million people, which means the country's population is smaller than cities such as Milan, Athens, Berlin, and something like 42 others in China. 500,000 people live in the capital of Windhoek, which is a peculiar fusion of African, German and South African influences, although none of those influences seem to have had a focus on timekeeping, as every clock in this sequence was wrong. English and Afrikaans are widely spoken. Windhoek's headline attraction is probably the art museum, which annoyingly is closed on Sundays. There were a few exhibits outside, but it was a bit of a shame to have missed out. Churches, though, are open on Sundays. I wandered past the NG Moedergemeente Dutch Baptist Church and heard singing, so got a little closer, and it was quite surreal to see a church packed with white people singing hymns in Afrikaans. only in southern Africa. In some ways, Namibia seems to enjoy being a little contrarian. One of the city's big churches is at the intersection of Robert Mugabe Avenue and Fidel Castro Street, two leaders who are not exactly lauded by the West. You can easily buy Vladimir Putin or Colonel Gaddafi t-shirts in the markets. Those two other upstanding fellows are Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary Marxist president of Burkina Faso, and Patrice Lumumba, the assassinated Prime Minister of the Congo. I didn't see anyone wearing that sort of shirt, but seeing Ronaldo or Leo Messi staring at you from shops is far more common. It wasn't an intimidating place to wander around, although I did feel that I stood out a bit as a visitor, even though there is still a substantial white minority in the city. Namibia is one of the richer countries in Africa, driven by the mining industry and aided by the good infrastructure network the South Africans left behind. There's a substantial mall in the middle of town, which offers a wormhole back to 1970s England. After shopping in Woolworths, you can have lunch at a Wimpy. Namibia experienced apartheid under South African administration, but the few people I spoke to didn't seem to harbour any real ill will towards South Africa, as they invested in the country when administering it and left it in pretty good shape. But whilst there is wealth, there's also a lot of poverty. Begging is an issue, and on several occasions people walked with me for quite some distance before giving up when they accepted that I wasn't going to give them anything. It wasn't a sinister experience, but it was quite annoying, and it did detract from my enjoyment of just strolling around. I did wander around a bit at night. The online advice is that it is safe at night, but you're advised to take taxis between destinations rather than walking. So I ended up eating in or around my hotel on both nights. Nothing exceptional to report on that front. That hotel was the Windhoek Avani, one of the smarter properties in the city, but at £85 a night, not particularly expensive. For that, I got a comfortable, modern room in a good city centre location. 2 large beds, coffee-making facilities, and a very decent view. That's the city's Hilton Hotel if your preference is to stay in a chain property that could be anywhere. And the bathroom was also very nice, with a separate tub and shower. That nightly rate also included a very extensive breakfast buffet both mornings I was there. Lots and lots of options, including some interesting local specialities. The hotel did also boast a rooftop pool, although it was not that appealing to use as it was located in the middle of one of the property's restaurants. So that was the morning of my full day there, and the point at which I recorded that intro. In the afternoon, I did something I've never done before. I went on safari. Asterisk. I'll explain the asterisk as we go, but I booked a game drive through Wild Wind Safaris. I paid for my experience, and this is not sponsored by them, but I really enjoyed it. I ended up as the only patron that afternoon and was collected from the Avani by Mr. Axa, who was excellent. We drove west out of town through some shanty towns that have built up as people have been drawn to the bright lights of Windhoek. My guide was charmingly apologetic about them, although I've seen a lot worse in Asia as well as other parts of Africa, and I was quite surprised to see a large number of cars parked outside some of the dwellings. Windhoek is a relatively developed city, but not everyone is sharing in that wealth. The Daan Viljoen game park is about 15 kilometres from the centre of town. You're then truly into 4-wheel drive territory as you follow a perhaps 10-kilometre lap of the park. Ready for some heavily pixelated shots of wildlife? Alrighty then. First up were a flock of zebras. I really didn't have the right camera equipment for this. The pixelation is annoying, but my own eyes confirm that these were indeed zebras rather than painted donkeys. Next was a solitary springbok. They're usually in a group, but I'll include this awful footage as it was the only one we saw. It really was a spectacular landscape. Next up was an ostrich, only 8 times zoom on this one. This may not look like it, but seeing an ostrich in the wild, asterisk, was quite a special moment. It's a big animal and was not even remotely bothered by our presence. Next came a very obliging wildebeest, only 6 times zoom here as it was really close to the track. Again, unusual to see just one, but it has no predators in the park, so it was positively tame. This wasn't the sort of safari where the guide needs to carry a big gun in case large predators get too close. Then some giraffes, 3 or 4 actually. You don't think of giraffes as being particularly camouflaged, but in this environment, they really are. You have to stop off to register your visit at the admin building, and there's accommodation here if you want to stay in the park and get the full experience. It's a great place and I really enjoyed it, but a couple of times you drive alongside the park's fence and it dawns on you that this probably isn't the most authentic safari experience you'll ever have, hence the asterisk qualifications I've made a few times now. The antelopes can come and go as they can jump the fence, but most of those other animals are effectively captive. They're found in this sort of territory in this part of the world, but they probably wouldn't be found in this specific territory if those fences weren't there. But it's the first experience of this sort that I've ever had, and I really enjoyed it. Mr. Anchor was very knowledgeable, and I think we saw almost everything there was to see in the park. And on the way out, one last highlight, a small flock of eland roaming the veldt, accompanied by a random warthog. And I'm not that embarrassed that the quality of this footage is so dreadful. My equipment was not purchased with this sort of filming in mind, but I hope I've conveyed the gist of my experience, and it's one I'd heartily recommend if you're in that neck of the woods. If you've done the Masai Mara or Kruger National Park, then it's perhaps not something to get too excited about, but if you're new to asterisk safaris, it's well worth the 60 quid this experience cost me. I really liked Namibia, and I'm really pleased it was the 100th country I visited. It's a country where you want to spend 90% of your time in the wilderness rather than in the cities, but the brevity of my time in country meant I had to split my time pretty much the other way round. Even so, it was still a truly memorable experience. I'm not going to rush back though, not to Windhoek, as there's little there to entertain you the first time you visit, let alone the second. And I'll probably not be rushing back to see the rest of Namibia either. There's still a lot of new places for me to visit around southern Africa, and whilst Namibia's wildlife is fascinating, other parts of Africa offer richer and more complete safari experiences. But for a raw wilderness experience, there are few places that can rival Namibia, and I'm sure I'll be back there one day, perhaps on a longer wilderness experience guided by my new friend, Mr. Anchor. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Give this video a like if you did, and leave me a comment. Have you been to Namibia? Are you going to go after watching this? Please subscribe if you're new, and if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there is a Patreon account, link below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.